Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. I am your host, Father Matthew Schneider, a priest with the Legionaries of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 363 and we're covering Gaudium et Spes 90 to 91, on we should work for charity and justice between peoples. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke about how we have a duty to help internationally, and this is often done best systematically through the Church, and the Church is present in international bodies to promote good ends. Today, we are continuing Chapter 5, the fostering of peace and the promotion of a community of nations. We're continuing Section 2, setting up an international community. However, I will note that 91 today, and 92 tomorrow, and then 93 especially, kind of form a conclusion. They don't have a division that says conclusion, but 93 is very clearly a conclusion. 91 starts moving in towards a conclusion. Today's summary is it's great to see Christians working for international cooperation, and the proposals of Vatican II can help all humans. Paragraph 90 has 3 subparagraphs, and we're going to read them in 2 parts. A, it's great to see Christians working for international cooperation. And B and C, active cooperation with other Christians and forming international Catholic organizations. So let's read 90A. An outstanding form of international activity on the part of Christians is found in the joint efforts, which both as individuals and in groups, that contribute to institutes already established or to be established, for the encouragement of cooperation among nations. There are also various Catholic associations on an international level, which can contribute in many ways to the building up of a peaceful and fraternal community of nations. These should be strengthened by augmenting in them the number of well-qualified collaborators, by increasing needed resources, and by advantageously fortifying the cooperation of the energies. For today, both effective action and the need for dialogue demand joint projects. Moreover, such associations contribute much to the development of a universal outlook, something certainly appropriate for Catholics. They also help to form an awareness of genuine universal solidarity and responsibility. This subparagraph, first of all, begins by praising those who are working in international cooperation, international peace. And say, hey, you Catholics, you Christians who do this, great work, keep it up. That's a heroic activity. And it notes it's not just individuals, but it's also a lot of times big associations, Catholic associations. There's a number of Catholic groups who work on international for peace and for cooperation. And those are great to see. And it's good to keep working and increase the collaborators, both having more humans, having more money, and also having more who have political power, and also finally those who have specific skills and talents. That's important. And finally, it notes that we should work for genuine solidarity and responsibility. In so doing, it notes that we as Catholics have a universal outlook. The word Catholic itself comes from 2 Greek words meaning kata, which becomes kath when based on a little complication in Greek, kata, which means through, and holos, which means the whole. And that katholos is the word for universal in Greek, from the whole. And so Catholics are universal, at least in principle. Obviously, Catholics of this nation and that nation have historically had a degree of nationalism as well. However, here it's pointing that an international attitude, a universal attitude, is good and appropriate for Catholics. Let's move on to 90B and C, which are about active cooperation with other Christians and forming international Catholic organizations. Let's begin. 90B. Finally, it is very much to be desired that Catholics, in order to fulfill their role properly in the international community, will seek to cooperate actively and in a positive manner, both with their separate brethren who together with them profess the gospel of charity, and with all men thirsting for true peace. C. The Council, considering the immensity of the hardships which still afflict the greater part of mankind today, regards it as most opportune that an organism of the Universal Church be set up in order that both the justice and love of Christ towards the poor might be developed everywhere. The role of such an organism would be to stimulate the Catholic community to promote progress in needy regions and international social justice. This, I think, really brings together a lot of what we've been talking about in the past few days, this idea of we need to cooperate for peace and justice, well, cooperation as well. And we work with others. We work not just with Catholics, but with other Christians and even non-Christians who do want true cooperation and peace. And then we want to set up some kind of international Catholic organization. Some exist. Some have been set up in the last 60 years. Some might have existed beforehand. I'm not an expert in this area, so I don't know exactly when they were all set up or things. And these organizations both work to change attitudes and to respond to crises. Both of those are important. We're moving on to 91, which is somewhat of a conclusion, at least of this section, this chapter, if not of the whole document. It doesn't explicitly state one way or the other. 91A indicates that if people accept Vatican II's proposals, it will build up all mankind. 91B notes that the program of Vatican II is based on the gospel and church teaching. So let's begin with 91A. Drawn from the treasures of church teaching, the proposals of this sacred synod look to the assistance of every man of our time, whether he believes in God or does not explicitly recognize him. If adopted, they will promote among men a sharper insight into their full destiny, and thereby lead them to fashion the world more to man's surpassing dignity, to search for a brotherhood which is universal and more deeply rooted, and to meet the urgencies of our ages with a gallant and unified effort born of love. So here, these proposals of Vatican II can help the whole church and the whole of mankind. That's what this subparagraph is getting to. So obviously we think these are for the whole church, but the proposals of the council, especially this document and a few others that are more about universal things, not just about internal church things, really have a great opportunity to help mankind even outside the church. I can just imagine how much better off we'd be if the UN and NATO accepted the proposals of Gaudium et Spes about international rules, about things like that. We would have much better brotherhood among nations, much better cooperation, less war, more respect for human dignity. The church is offering a proposal that comes from the gospel, which we'll talk about in the next subparagraph, but also which helps all mankind. You don't have to believe in the gospel to be helped by it, because the gospel gives us an idea of human dignity, which, if applied, gives everyone higher dignity, even non-believers. So, moving on to our last subparagraph for today, 91B, and it notes the program of Vatican II is based on the gospel and church teaching. B. Undeniably, this conciliar program is but a general one in several of its parts, and deliberately so, given the immense variety of situations and forms of human culture in the world. Indeed, while it presents teaching already accepted in the church, the program will have to be followed up and amplified, since it sometimes deals with matters in a constant state of development. Still, we have relied on the Word of God and the Spirit of the Gospel. Hence, we entertain the hope that our proposals will prove to be of substantial benefit to everyone, especially after they have been adapted to individual nations and mentalities by the faithful under the guidance of their pastors. The program of Vatican II is broad to be flexible for time and space. That is what it is getting at. There are differences in cultures, there are differences in situations, both in time and in space. For example, setting up something on the internet to work for some of these things would be a pretty normal thing to say today. It would have been unintelligible in 1965. That's a difference of time. There is differences of, space in the sense of like what works here versus in Sri Lanka is probably different. Here being United States or Canada, where I have lived my entire life, basically. Now, It also notes that this is based on the magisterium, based on revelation. What the council is proposing is not something new. It's not something kind of, let's just make new doctrines. It is applying the gospel, applying the magisterium to modern circumstances. There are some areas that are prudential judgment, not like dogmatic statements, but it has been pretty clear when it's stating those things. And we noted in cases where it doesn't really apply due to different circumstances. That was either yesterday or the day before where we talked about population growth, right? That's something that's totally changed in the past 60 years, the rate of population growth. And so here, the Council Fathers end this section and this paragraph noting that they hope a lot of these are accepted because they will help people out if they are accepted. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarQuest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly to join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the next paragraph of Gaudium et Spes, which is paragraph 92 on mutual esteem between peoples. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information, such as playlists for the podcast, and the podcast documents, and a reading plan. Amen.